Brian, it's brilliant to see you here tonight. You've been in the industry for so long. Interested to know, first of all, just how you've seen the industry change over the decades.
Oh, absolutely, radically, and not always for the best now. I mean, these are very worrying times for newspapers. They're losing a lot of advertising. They're losing readership, which has gone on to the digital organizations. And one's really worried about it for the future. As for football, one's seen the most absolutely radical changes. Years ago, 1960, when I'd covered the Olympics in Rome, where I used to live, so it was a good Olympics for me, I had the first ever sports column in the Sunday Times. And the first thing I did was to row in behind Jimmy Hill in the hope of abolishing the maximum wage, which he did. And the great success, apart from that, was the Sunday Times, which was quite a conservative newspaper, in their leader column, which has nothing to do with me, actually published a piece exhorting the players to strike. And so Jimmy got his way and the maximum wage was abolished. And now I see players earning in a week what I probably couldn't hope to earn in years, which I suppose is partly my fault. But not entirely. There's a whole Bosman case as well.
I was going to ask you about your time in Rome. How did that shape you as a football writer in particular?
Well, everything else. I mean, I lived in Florence for 2 years and then Rome for a year. And I wrote my first really successful novel there.
Sorry, Brian. And that was a false start, we hope?
Yes. Anyway, no, I lived in Florence for a couple of years and then in Rome for a year. I was working for the Corriere dello Sport of Rome. I worked for La Nazione in Florence, and I had all sorts of freelance work in England. And out of that, I wrote my first really successful novel, which was Along the Arno, which was set in Florence, and came out in 1956.
That book's had quite an impact, though, hasn't it?
It did, but I think it's forgotten now. I mean, it's all too easy to be forgotten. If you were writing a piece forgotten men of British fiction, I'd be on it. Although my collection of short stories has just been published. My best football short stories has just been published, which is quite encouraging, by this very, very good little magazine When Saturday Comes. But one gets forgotten all too easily. I mean, other books I've written, which did terribly, terribly well at the time and were taken up by people always just about to be filmed and weren't, they're pretty well forgotten too.
I'm not sure totally forgotten.
Well,
there's been so much more than the football writing there, hasn't there?
Yes.
You mentioned novels, script writing as well.
Yes, I was one of the original writers for That Was the Week That Was, with Ned Sherrin.
Was that a fun programme to be involved with?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, I had 10 things, stories, sketches, and songs done on it. And then Ned was a strange figure. I mean, I was brought in from the very beginning, and then he suddenly got grandiose. And Fenella Fielding said to me, "He's got no sense of humour, really, has he? It's all gingled, really." He said to me one day, "That was very funny what you just did." And I thought, yes, it was. But why should he think so? And I was out on my ear. But funnily enough, when he had when the TW3 was finished and he had another program, not so much a program, more a way of life, I wrote the only sketch that Tom Courtenay ever agreed to do. So I was very friendly with Tom at that time. I was a Liverpool supporter who was dragged on by the police. The punchline is, he's not seen any games this season. And the interviewer says, "Well, don't you think that's rather an unfortunate thing? The police have him off before the game every time." He said, "No, Wack, no, because I'm the one supporter this season that's not seen Liverpool beat."
Yes, exactly. Of all the work that you've done then, with the football writing, the novels and the script writing, what would you say, what's given you the most satisfaction?
It's very hard to say. I mean, I love football journalism. I've always wanted to be it. I mean, when I was at school, I was writing Arsenal almanacs and things. And I was writing when I was at Charterhouse, I was writing match reports for the Carthusian. which were very unkind and I think probably unfair. I would never write as pungently now as I did then. But I would have thought novels, particularly my novel The Olympian, was the only one which had great success in the United States. And A Second Home, which was about a neurotic Jewish actress, and Peter Hall was going to make it his first film. But as this was me, he didn't. There's a wonderful Italian saying, which I think always applies to me, se faceva capelli nascono senza teste. If he were making hats, they'd be born without heads.
And what does it mean to you to be here at an evening such as this tonight?
Well, it's a very pleasant surprise. Very pleasant surprise, you know. It's dragging me out of obscurity.
You're very self-effacing, but are you aware of the esteem of which you're held by sports readers?
Well, it's very nice to know, but the trouble is, being a journalist, there's so much you want to do, not for yourself but for the game, and you can't. Because journalists, ultimately, I mean, I've often been called the most influential journalist, but that's only in question of other people's style, and it may or might not be true. I think it probably isn't. But to do the things I wanted to do are impossible, because you're just a voice crying in the wilderness. I'd have loved to have absolutely exploded the regimes of that horrible swine, Jean Avalanche, when he was president of FIFA, having ousted and through bribery our own Sir Stanley Rouse, and then later on Blatter. But you're impotent. There's nothing you can do. You haven't got the power, you haven't got the leverage. So by definition, almost any journalist with altruistic ambitions is by definition going to be a failure, and I'm one of them.
I wouldn't say a failure. But is that genuine the way you feel about modern day journalism?
Well, since time immemorial, you know, certainly with FIFA, since Avalanche cheated Rouse out of it all those years ago in Frankfurt by bringing Africans over, bribing them to come over and vote for him. And Rouse was out and the battle was lost. And I don't think the new chap Infantino is going to be much of a help either.
Surely the Lance Armstrong case, though, is a case of journalism, investigative journalism.
Yes, there's a brilliant effort by our own David Walsh of the Sunday Times. That was wonderful. But that is a sort of rara avis, a rare bird, you know. The FIFA inroads, the FIFA corruption is a far more complex and deeper affair than even that.
So lots of pieces that you would have liked to have done. When you look back, though, what's the piece you're most proud of doing?
I don't know. The funniest things, one of the ones I particularly liked doing was for the World Cup final, which we won, England in 1966. But what was interesting is my report for the Sunday Times, I got a hero letter from the editor. It included one abysmal error. Was in those days we didn't have monitors on the desk, and when they equalised Germany, it looked as if when Emmerich drove the ball into the mixer in the penalty area, it looked as if someone had handled it. So all of us sitting around there said, shouldn't be a goal, that was handball. And then went on to Weber, who scored. And then later on I edited and wrote the screenplay for the official film, Goal. And so I had only too good an opportunity time and again to see on the moviola that I was completely wrong. The ball, in fact, had hit Schnellinger in the back. When he felt the pain, he put his hands to his back, and it was a complete, what the French call a trompe-l'oeil. Don't know whether you can use that in football journalism anymore. Anyway, it was a trompe-l'oeil, and we all thought it had been handled, but he hadn't, and the goal was a good one, and this was impressed on me time and again when I watched it on the moviola.
It didn't count against you in your career going forwards, though,
well,
fortunately.
I said at the time, and I've said afterwards, that I think either nobody read the article or that they were so euphoric about England winning that it didn't matter.
Brian, on that note, congratulations on the award tonight and the recognition. It's been a real pleasure
Thank you very much.
speaking to you.
Thank you.